So welcome back. This is tools for parents to support their child. This is week 3, and this is the final presentation that links sort of the 10 tools that we're going to be thinking about for the past couple of weeks. So I hope it's been helpful, and let's dive in. So just a reminder, I'm Joel. I'm the Elementary School Curriculum Coordinator at ISP, and here's my email address at the bottom if you need me or want to contact me about anything to do with the learning in elementary school. Happy to help. So just a reminder, these tools have been taken from Harvard Graduate School of Education and Project Zero. Project Zero is a particular part of Harvard Graduate School of Education. And the ideas have been brought together by the author Ron Ritchart, who's created a couple of books, Making Thinking Visible and Creating Cultures of Thinking. Okay, so just to recap, in part 1, we looked at developing a growth mindset and thinking about the question, what makes you say that, and how that can encourage students and children to embellish their thinking for others. And then the idea about challenging, but don't rescue our students, and the fact that challenge is an important part of the learning process and thinking about the learning pit. And last week we thought about what questions did you ask today, and about how we can really ask questions that the students are going to be interested in, powerful questions, and that really show that what we value from them. Focus on the learning rather than the work, and how can we make the learning the thing that's the important thing and not the completion of the work, but actually the learning process. And again, thinking about that process over product idea that we shared from a couple of videos back. And then also about the idea about supporting your child in arguing effectively and persuasively, and how important that is. Okay, so this week we're going to be looking at 4 things. And so we're going to be thinking about name and notice thinking. We're going to be thinking about providing time to pursue passions. We're going to be thinking about making our own thinking visible. And we're going to be thinking about fostering and making connections. So let's start with name and notice thinking. So what does this really mean? Well, what it means is that, use the language of thinking to name and notice the thinking that your child is using. For instance, when we're listening to our children, we're really, really listening to them, we'll be able to think about what type of thinking they're actually doing. And why is this important? Well, it makes it more visible to them when we're able to name it and notice it. It also means that they will continue to think in this way, because again, it's something that we value and something that we have heard in them. And lastly, they will be able to think in a more independent manner because of this, because they know, oh, this is how I can build explanations, or this is how I can wonder. So here's some examples. So the different types of thinking, and think is about, I think, one of the most 125th, I think, used word in the English language. And so there's many different words for think, but sometimes we just say the word think. And one of the ideas of Ron Ritchart is that there's 8 thinking moves that help to build our understanding. And these are the 8 thinking moves which he calls. And so, we want our students to be observing and wondering and reasoning. We want them to be building explanations, considering different viewpoints, making connections, going deeper, and uncovering complexity, and then forming conclusions. So when we're aware of this type of thinking, we can also name and notice it with our children. So, for instance, some things that we can say when we're really listening to our students and we notice that they're thinking in such a way, we can say, I like how you use what you already know to make connections. And again, that's a trigger for them to know that, this is making connections. This is what I am doing right now. Or that's a perspective I had not thought about. Makes them to think about, this is a different way to think about something. Or I value the way that you are able to build an explanation about this. This is me really understanding something and I'm able to explain it. Or you've really looked closely and in detail. So these are just some ways in which we can notice the thinking that our children are doing. And then again, this helps them to become more independent. All right, number 8 is about providing time to pursue passions. Now, we all know passions are very important. We all have different passions. But how do we really help and support students and children to pursue their own passions? There's this great quote from Oprah Winfrey, and she says, passion is energy. Feel the power of what comes from focusing on what excites you. And I think that's such an important thing, the power of what comes from focusing on what excites you. How do we give the children the opportunity learn and to be part of something which they really enjoy. And I think this comes from, the questions that we can ask and support them about what it is that they enjoy. So how do we do that? Well, sit down and ask them, what do you love to do? Or maybe, what do you want to find more out about? What do you get so lost in that you lose track of time? What can you talk about for hours? What do you find fulfilling or enjoyable or important? These are just some questions, again, for us to consider asking our children, and it can help us just to pursue their passions and gives them that energy and that focus in learning, which we really want them to be, so that they can be a lifelong learner. Okay, number 9 is make your own thinking visible. So we're models to children in terms of what it means to be a thinker and a learner. And so the words and the way in which we explain ourselves will be passed on to our children. And so we need to model the fact that we have passions and we have curiosity about the world, that we reflect and maybe we don't know everything, that learning may be sometimes challenging, but at the same time I can come out of that when I continue to work on what I'm doing. Or, even again, just making my thinking visible in terms of, I'm making a connection to something that I've previously done. Or I used to think this, but now I think this. So again, just being aware of the type of thinking that we are doing so that we can become a positive role model for our children in being a thinker. So lastly, we're going to be thinking about fostering connections. And fostering connections is really about students who constantly find new information. As children, you're learning so much about you and your world around you. And so to learn and to make sense of the information, you must be able to connect it with prior experience and then integrate it to what you're currently finding out about. And this is just a way, we can use questions and we can help and support students to make these connections between something that they have previously done, something that they're doing right now, and something they might do in the future. So again, there's some questions here and things to think about. So how does this connect with? How does this fit with something that you already knew? How might you connect these ideas to what you've been finding out? Or what similarities are there between this to this? Or what's the difference between this and this? So again, just asking these more open questions to our children and to our students, it can really help them to develop this way of making connections in their head, making connections between things that they've learned before and things which they're going to learn in the future. Okay, so over the past 3 weeks, we've sort of delved into sort of 10 areas and these ideas, from a growth mindset to what makes you say that, to challenge but don't rescue, to thinking about learning versus work. And really, they've just been an opportunity for us to think about, how can we support our children at home and the students that we have in our classrooms in our schools. And these are posters that I've created for the Spanish population. There's a little bit more information if you would like to read about that and all these 10 tools. There's also this, which is a English version of 9 of the apps making connections not on here. And then there's this, which has all of the 10 tools here in one page, which I've created as well in Spanish. All right, and at the end here, you can then click onto these links, and this will take you to specific things. So we have the 9 tools, the visual there, the 10 tools, which does include the connections, the 10 tools for parents. And you can just click these out, and if you have access to a printer, you might want to pin it up, and it might be a reminder for you to think about using in the next couple of weeks during the continuing of distance learning, or even in the summer, and maybe beyond that. And then at the bottom here, you can click onto these links, and then you might be able to click on the posters, and they're in either English or Spanish. So I hope it's been a useful 3 weeks. I've enjoyed sharing some of the things from Ron Ritchart and from Project Zero in Harvard Graduate School of Education. Again, please reach out to me if you have any questions or queries. I'm always happy to help and come back to you. Okay, be well.